Hello, my name is Vasile Stanescu. I'm an associate professor of communication at Mercer University in the United States. I'm also the co-founder of the North American Association for Critical Animal Studies, and I also work with the Climate Social Science Network, focused on animal agriculture and climate change, housed out of Brown University. And overall, what I do is I work on issues relating to animals, human-animal interaction, critical animal studies, and in particular, animals and climate change. And today, I would like to present my recent work entitled Bullshit, Animal Agriculture and Greenwashing. But before we begin, a quick notation on the term. In the field of rhetoric, communication, bullshit is actually a technical term. And here is what it means. If one is purchasing a house and they ask the real estate agent, hey, I love those woods behind the house. Are those woods ever going to be developed? And the real estate agent says, no, absolutely not. Those woods are always going to stay exactly the way they are. The real estate agent is not exactly lying. They have no idea whether that's true or not. They have simply moved beyond caring what even is true. That is what we mean when we use the term bullshit. The real estate agent is bullshitting because they no longer have any interest even in what is true or false. All they're trying to do is just make money. So that is what I mean when I say animal agriculture, as I will highlight, seems to no longer have any interest even in what is true or false. All they want to do is try to make money. So let's take a look at a few examples. In the United States context, Nyman Ranch is the world's largest producer of so-called humane or free range beef in the entire world. And their slogan, as you see here, is at Nyman, we're different. So here is a steal from their website, and you can see that their claim is raised with care. So they claim to treat their animals well. Nyman Ranch, raised with care. So he said their other slogan is, we're different. So, however, this narrative that Nyman Ranch is providing care for their animals or is significantly different than other forms of animal husbandry is a bit simplistic. So this is their history. They're about Nyman. But what they leave out is that the co-founders of Nyman Ranch are Bill and Nicolette Nyman. And what actually happened is that the shareholders of Nyman Ranch forced out Bill Nyman from his own company hostily. He didn't want to leave. And they did it so that they could make more money. So in essence, so they could lower the standard of care for the animals that they're raising while being able to keep the same name and therefore make more money. In fact, Bill Nyman no longer legally has the right to his own name in terms of anything related to animal husbandry. He can't claim to raise any of his own animals and call them Nyman. He's lost that legal right. He's also publicly spoken out against Nyman Ranch and says that he himself now boycotts Nyman because of the standard of care that they give, which he considers to be very, very low. Additionally, what the website leaves out, and so we'll take a look back, and you see if you type in Nyman Ranch, and anyone can do this on their own, just type in Nyman Ranch, this is what comes up. And you can see that it looks like it's its own company, perhaps owned by someone named Nyman. So we've already established that that is not true, that is not, in fact, owned by someone named Nyman. But what you will never find out, no matter how long you look at the website, is that Nyman Ranch is no longer its own company. After the shareholders forced out Bill Nyman, they were later bought by Purdue Farms. So this is from Purdue Farms website, where you can find out that Nyman Ranch is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Purdue Farms. Now, what is Purdue Farms? Purdue Farms is a confined animal feeding operation A CAFO, what is euphemistically referred to as a factory farm. So a factory farm, one of the world's largest, now owns Nyman Ranch, even though you cannot tell this from Nyman Ranch's own website. So a bit unsurprisingly, to connect this to greenwashing, greenwashing means the way that companies pretend to be sustainable when in reality they are not. If you look at the environmental claims from Nyman Ranch, now that they are wholly owned by Purdue Farms, which is a factory farm, has lagoons of manure, confines animals so they never see the light of day, these kind of activities. What you'll see is that sustainability no longer has any true meaning. So if you just take a look here, you can see that what sustainability means is the ability to keep making money. So if you look down that second paragraph, quote, if our farmers or ranchers are not economically viable, they will lose their land, which diminishes the opportunity for future generations to return to the farm. So for Purdue-owned Nyman Ranch, sustainability now just means economic sustainability, i.e. the ability just to make money. And as far as I can tell, there are no more environmental claims at all on Nyman Ranch. Likewise, there is still a cause of Nyman Ranch. So when Bill Nyman and Nicolette Nyman founded Nyman Ranch, the website was explicit. But part of this reason was to fight against factory farms like Purdue, and instead to fight for small-scale farmers. And we might have many possible critiques of small-scale farms. There's many things that they do that are troubling. There's many ways that they actually harm the environment and other animals. So certainly small-scale farms have their own problems and engage in their own forms of greenwashing. However, what stands out to me is I've been doing this work now for 20 years, and about 20 years ago, at least they were two different industries. There was a small-scale farm industry, which was problematic in many ways, but it critiqued factory farms. And there was a factory farm industry that in turn critiqued small-scale farms. What has now happened over the last 2 decades is they are increasingly one industry. So Purdue Farms now owns and their largest competitor, their largest company that critiqued them, Nyman Ranch. And so they are now just one company. And just obviously, no amount of buying Purdue Farm-owned Nyman Ranch is ever going to put Purdue Farms out of business. They bought it so they could make more money. Nyman Ranch charges more for their meat than Purdue can get away with. If they own Nyman Ranch, they can just make more money. It's niche marketing, just marketing to different people. However, what really stands out to me is that Nyman Ranch has kept this cause that originally Bill Nyman had when Nyman Ranch was his own company, suggesting the reason consumers should pay more to buy Nyman Ranch is to end factory farms. So you can see it here a little bit where it's like our family farmers. Nyman Ranch started with one farm, but you can really see it here very clearly. And I'll give you just a second to take a look. So this is their goals of frequently asked questions, and it's like, why should you buy Nyman Ranch? And remember, the website suggests that that's its own independent company and does not tell people that it's owned by Purdue Farms. And what you see here is, quote, the value of sustainable farming can be understood by examining the alternative, factory farms. Factory-style hog farms house thousands of animals in crowded, confined buildings. Farm managers typically store liquefied waste in huge pits called waste lagoons that can be 1 story deep and acres wide. Even under the best of circumstances, these lagoons are enormous sources of pollution, including antibiotics, bacteria, and nitrogen that leach to groundwater, contaminating air and can spill and run off to surface waters. At Nyman Ranch, we're different and we're proud of it. So that is greenwashing. Yes, there are some ways in which the farmers, the animals that are raised via Nyman Ranch, are treated differently than the animals that are owned by Purdue in other contexts. But what is happening is Purdue Farm is owned their own competitor, their major critiquer. And despite this, they've kept on the website the claim that you should give money to Nyman Ranch, which is in reality Purdue Farms, for the purpose of putting Purdue Farms out of business in order to help the environment. So what is happening is Purdue Farms is selling the critique of Purdue Farms to consumers in order to make more money, and consumers are overwhelmingly falling for it. So that is what I would call bullshit. And to be clear, every confined feeding operation, CAFO factory farm, has their own version of this. So Purdue Farms owns Nyman Ranch, which is the largest, most famous, but they all have their own version of this. So this is something called pasture crafted beef. And again, you can Google it on your own and you will watch a lovely ad. You can sort of see kind of an image of the ad here. It has cowboys, they ride horses, they have hats on. They talk about how much they love the land. They talk about how you can trust them because they love the cattle. It never explicitly says it, but it seems to suggest that they do rotational grazing. So this is when they carefully move cows around so they don't overgraze the land. It suggests that they do regenerative farming, which is even more precise than rotational grazing. All regenerative farming has to include rotational grazing, but regenerative farming is even more complicated. And regenerative farming is based on the idea that carefully moving the cows around how they graze in certain circumstances can help the grass to go back, and the grass will sequester carbon. And so they're suggesting again that it's good for the environment. And they very much claim that they're doing something fundamentally different than factory farms. So like Nyman Ranch, we're different and we're proud of it. They don't use that exact phrase, but it is overwhelmingly the ethos of this ad. Pasture crafted beef, the claim that they are having cows raised on pasture. The problem is they are owned by Cargill. So, like Purdue Farms, Cargill is a mass, there it is, Cargill is a mass confined animal feeding operation. Again, one of the world's largest. So there is no company that is pasture crafted beef. It's a brand. It's a brand wholly owned by Cargill, and they do it like Purdue to make more money. The industry has a term for this, which Cargill itself has used, which is beef with adjectives. And they actually mean this quite pejoratively for consumers. They mean consumers just like a bunch of words before they before they buy their beef. So if they can just add these words, they can make more money. So there are advisors, consultants who go to the company and say, here's how you need to add in these words, pasture crafted beef. And most of these words are not regulated in any way. In the United States context, there is no legal regulation of pasture crafted beef. It doesn't say pasture raised, which also wouldn't be legal, but would be maybe closer, just pasture crafted. And so it sounds like they're saying something when in reality they're saying nothing at all. You'll also notice the text is a little small, but if you look, you'll notice that it's described as grass fed, grain finished. I'll say that again. Grass fed, grain finished. So what does that actually mean? Uh, well, this is the grain finishing part. What it means is that pasture crafted beef is in essence identical to any of the other CAFO raised beef that Cargill makes all the time. What they do is exploit a small loophole, which is that all factory farmed cows spend some amount of time feeding on pasture before they are taken into the feedlots and fattened up on corn, on grain. And so they exploit this loophole, which again is not any different, that they ever are on pasture, to then somehow suggest that they're fundamentally different, that they are pasture raised, and that they should command a higher price with the claim that they're doing something better or even different for the environment. So again, here is the main takeaway. Yes, there's problems with pasture raised beef, actual real pasture-raised beef. There's some research may even be worse in terms of GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, than even the factory farm system, than even CAFOs, primarily by land use changes. But regardless of that, at least it used to be two different ways of raising animals that we could debate about. Now, increasingly, it is just one. Cargill has something they call pasture-crafted beef, which in reality is just feedlot beef. So at least Nyman Ranch was treating the animals somewhat differently, even though in reality it was still owned by Purdue Farms. But now pasture-crafted beef is just a rebranding, as far as I can tell, of just feedlot beef. It is now just increasingly the same industry. Let's take a look at another example. So if you go to this website, it looks quite good. Nature-raised farms. Simple food is simply better, but it is just owned by Tyson, which is, again, a mass confined animal feeding operation. This one might be my favorite example. This is open prairie natural pork. Open prairie comes from the belief that people deserve responsibly raised meat they can feel proud to serve their families. That's what it says. Of course, none of that legally means anything. It has this picture of old farm, open prairie, natural meats. There's nothing on here to tell you that is in fact owned by Tyson, but as you may have started to pick up, of course it is. Open prairie is owned by Tyson, and they are not raised in prairie, even though the name of the company is Open Prairie. So if you go to their frequently asked questions, and the question is, do the hogs live on open pasture? I guess they changed the word pasture to prairie to make the difference seem less startling. And the answer is no. Simply because hogs need protection from predators and extreme temperatures. That is why an open prairie natural pork program are kept in climate-controlled barns where they get just the right amount of food, veterinarian care, and attention. So here's a picture of open prairie pork. This is not a prairie. They will never see the light of day. They will never see any prairie. They will never see grass. Like Cargill, this is just a factory farm rebranded. This is just Tyson, as far as I can tell, identical factory farmed pigs, which they are now calling open prairie, to be able to charge more, to be able to have niche marketing, to be able to confuse consumers, to be able to make the consumers think that paying more to Tyson, which they don't even realize they're doing, is going to make a difference for the animals or the environment, although clearly neither is true. This will have the exact same lagoons of waste that any other factory farm will have. It'll have the same problems of overcrowding of the pigs that any other factory farm will have. So again, the main takeaway, there are problems with free-range farming, absolutely. There is greenwashing that happens, but at least it used to be two different industries. There are still some family farms, but increasingly it is now one industry. The CAFO system is buying or creating their own brands to trick consumers, to make more money, to stop regulation, to suggest that the industry is less cruel or more environmentally sustainable, although none of that is true. And they're literally just selling factory farmed meat to people who actually care about the animals or the environment and getting away with it. So unfortunately, I'm not fluent in Hungarian, but I did want to find an example in Hungary, since these other examples were primarily in the US context. Although similar things do happen in Canada, we do export meat, so it is an international problem. So I did rely, I have to confess, on Google Translate, but from what I can tell, this is also happening in Hungary. So this website claims that their animals are treated well, that they have high animal welfare, they have good housing conditions, that they spend lots of time on pasture, they're pasture raised, which all sounds lovely. So kind of all of these same words we've seen in the US context now apply to beef that's raised in Hungary. However, they also tell us that they raise veal. Veal will never see the light of day. Veal are not raised on pasture. Veal, their skin stays white, actually. It's so white. Customers prefer it. They think it's almost healthy. They like the whiteness, but it's because they never see the light of day. They don't get to move. And you can see it actually is set up here. The meat of these young animals is soft and tender because the muscles are not fully developed. Here, I'll actually just move down just a little bit so that you can read all of this. Yes, that's because they're babies, children. Veal are calves. They're killed as babies. Uh, the composition of veal is favorable. It contains a lot of protein, but compared to beef, it contains much less fat, which is why it must be cooked gently so it doesn't dry out. Sure, but that has nothing to do with the horrible mistreatment of the animals necessary to produce veal. How long is a calf a calf? You notice that they even say that the animals are slaughtered between 9 and 12 months of age, so before they're a year old. So there is no way that the veal that they're selling matches any of these other terms. So, at least in this one case, there is also a kind of confusion, a kind of misleading, where they're simultaneously saying that we treat our animals well, that they have access to pasture, that is fundamentally different in terms of animal welfare, which they claim to really care about, and different in terms of the environment, which they claim to really care about. And at the same time, they're selling a product which even they admit is inherently cruel and killed before a year old and soft because their muscles cannot even develop because they can't even move. So this too is greenwashing and humane washing. Another context. Now, again, this is from the United States generally. It's a company, now it's an international company, but it's found in the United States called Chipotle. I couldn't find any locations in Hungary, but you can Google and watch the ads. And because of this ads, for a while, it was the single most profitable uh, fast casual or fast food restaurant in the entire world. Supplanting McDonald's, the number one, for several years because of this ad. So the name of the ad is called The Scarecrow. And like I say, if you will just Google it and take a watch on your own time, it's very interesting. What it claims, Chipotle, that's the claim, they make burritos. And the scarecrow here realizes that he is being lied to by factory farms. Realizes that while they have these pretty ads of the animals being treated well, in reality, they're treated terribly. And he actually focuses specifically on veal. So there's this beautiful ad of happy cows, and he pushes it aside. This is the most impactful moment of the entire ad. So he takes an ad showing happy cows, and he pushes it aside, and he finds a veal calf, these babies that can't move, with his eyes looking up to him. And it really affects the scarecrow when the scarecrow goes and founds Chipotle, creates the company to make a difference, and then starts to sell the burritos that way. So that's the ad. The claim is Chipotle is anti-factory farm. The claim is that people are being lied to, and the factory farms claim to treat the animals well, like Cargill, like Tyson, but this is a trick. This is a lie, and that he is telling the truth and revealing what is really happening to those cows. It even made a computer game to go along with it, which was the number one game that you could download off the Apple App Store for several months after the ad came out. And in this game, this is very important, listen to this. In the game, you would free animals. You would break into a factory farm and free the animals from the cages and take them to pasture. And once you did that, you would earn a free burrito, technically a buy one, get one free burrito at Chipotle. You would literally break the law if they were actual animals, break in, steal animals, and then free them from these horrible, evil factory farms and get rewarded with a real burrito at Chipotle if you would do it. So that was the level. So this is their ad, this is their game. However, and you might be able to guess now, in reality, Chipotle sells factory farmed meat. In reality, after you had virtually broken in and stole virtual animals, which of course help no real animals at all, and won a free burrito to Chipotle, almost certainly, if you ordered meat in that burrito, you would actually be eating meat from animals raised in a factory farm setting. So, to be specific, the chicken, 100% factory farm, same as any other chicken. The cows, about 50-50, but the more free range cows that they serve are actually raised and imported from Australia, which perhaps the cows are treated better, but really pushes against the kind of environmental claims that they're claiming to like ship the meat from Australia to the United States. And again, it's only 50-50 chance that you even be getting anything different. The pigs, those are the only ones that seem to be fundamentally different, and they are all sourced from Nyman Ranch, which, as we've talked about, is actually just a wholly owned subsidiary of Purdue Farms. So they got exposed. The company, Chipotle, got exposed for what they were doing. And their defense, and you can see it right here, is we never professed to being perfect. The commitment we've made is to constant improvement. Their other defense is we operate in the gray area. So there's no legal term for what Chipotle is doing, kind of like with pasture raised, kind of like with open prairie. So they can get away with what they're doing. So rather it's on the production side of the animals being raised at Nyman Ranch, which is really Purdue Farms, at Pasture Crafted, which is really Cargill, at Open Prairie, which is really Tyson, or rather it's on the consumption side of going to the restaurant, the one of the largest, while this ad was going on, the most profitable, and buying from people who say, hey, we are opposed to factory farms. The reason to buy for us is because you are opposed to factory farms. What the consumer is increasingly getting is still factory farm meat. So I want to see Chipotle and a Nyman Ranch, particularly in unison. What both of them are doing is selling the. Sorry, slight technical problem. Just to finish. Here is the main takeaway. Under classical versions of Marxism, we have an understanding of the commodity fetish. So, what is the commodity fetish? It is the idea that the labor that goes into producing something vanishes when you look at the final product. So here we have a woman who loves her diamond earrings, but what she cannot see is the person who worked to put the diamond in, who refined the diamond, and in particular, the often enslaved people in conflict-driven areas who mine the diamond. So all that labor and blood and suffering vanish like magic into fetish whenever you see a product. So that is the commodity fetish. However, I want to suggest that in terms of what we see now with Purdue-owned Nyman Ranch or Chipotle, which is selling factory farm meat, where their only ads are anti-factory farm meat, is something fundamentally different. We can, if we want to use a term, call it the post-commodity fetish. But really what I mean is what is not happening here. She is not buying the diamonds because they market themselves as not mined by enslaved people. But since consumers are realizing that they are being lied to, they are realizing that the commodity fetish is happening, they're realizing that something is being left out and not told to them. Companies are seizing upon this to sell us anything, even a critique of themselves. So overwhelmingly, what Nyman Ranch is selling, the cause of Nyman Ranch, the reason they say, give us more money, is to put factory farms out of business. They are advertising against themselves. But since they're hiding the fact that in reality, they're just Purdue farms, that is not less of the commodity fetish. It is more, it is trickier. Or to give it another example, this one is going back to where the scarecrow is literally looking through an ad that shows happy cows and seeing the veal calf. So the claim is, hey, we know you're being lied to. These other companies are lying to you. These factory farms are lying to you. but we will tell you the truth. We will look through the ad together and tell you the truth. But since in reality, it is still an ad, all that is happening is the consumers are being even more tricked. That is the post-commodity fetish, an ad that claims to pierce the commodity fetish, that claims to look through the ad, but still lies to the consumer. Overwhelmingly, that is what factory farms are doing. They're selling the critique of factory farms to consumers, and consumers are falling for it. I would finally like to end with a request. I love that you are working to build animal studies in Eastern Europe. I think this is one of the most important things that any of us can do. And I want you to know that if I can help you or work with you in any way, please let me know. Thank you. Thank you for this conference. Thank you for letting me speak. And thank you for all of the work that you are doing each and every day.